Hey guys, welcome back to more Reddit r/legal advice stories. In this Ripestories video, imagine serving your country overseas only to come home and find 6 strangers parked on your private property. But it gets even worse. There's a neighbor screaming that he owns your land because the local HOA sold it to him for 15 grand. The catch? Your property is not even part of the HOA. Let's dive right into the video. The first one is titled "Stranger Claims He Bought My Vacant Lot for Parking. The HOA sold it to him without my permission." So I need some serious advice here because I'm honestly losing my mind over this situation. I own a vacant lot that I inherited from my grandfather many years ago, and it is located in a suburban area. The lot is adjacent to a neighborhood that has an HOA, but my property is not part of that HOA. This is extremely important. I have all the original deed documentation, surveys and title work that clearly show my lot is a separate parcel that predates the HOA by about 15 years and was never subject to their covenants or restrictions. I'm in the military and I was deployed overseas. I got back stateside about 3 weeks ago, and before I left I had the lot securely fenced with a locked gate because I've had issues in the past with people trying to dump trash there or use it as a shortcut. I had a property management company that was supposed to check on it monthly and handle any issues, but apparently they dropped the ball completely. When I pulled up to my property, I almost had a heart attack. The gate was wide open, the padlock was cut off and lying on the ground, and there were 6 cars parked on my lot. Not just parked neatly either, they had driven over parts of my fence, torn up the grass, and there were tire marks everywhere. I could also see trash and what looked like oil stains on the ground. I was standing there trying to process what I was seeing when a man came walking over from one of the houses in the adjacent HOA neighborhood. He asked me what I was doing on his parking lot, and I told him this was my property and asked him what the hell he thought he was doing parking on it. And that is when things got really insane. He claimed that he had bought this lot from the HOA 6 months ago specifically to use as overflow parking for his multiple vehicles and for some of his neighbors who needed extra parking. He said he paid $15,000 for it. He even had paperwork, some kind of deed transfer or document with the HOA letterhead on it. I told him that was impossible because the HOA does not even own this property and never has. I own it, I have the deed, and nobody had any right to sell it. He then got really aggressive and said I was trying to scam him and that he had been using this lot for months with full permission already, and that if I had a problem with it, I should take it up with the HOA. I immediately called the non-emergency police line, and when the officer showed up, he looked at my documentation, looked at the neighbor's paperwork, and basically said this was a civil matter that would need to be sorted out in court. The cop couldn't make anyone move their cars based on the conflicting documents we both had, even though the county records clearly show me as the owner. That was frustrating as hell, but I get that the cop's hands were kind of tied. The officer did tell the neighbor that he should probably stop using the lot until this was legally resolved, but the neighbor just scoffed and said he was not going anywhere until his property rights were confirmed by a judge. I went directly to the HOA president's house and I was trying to stay calm, but I was pretty angry. I showed him my deed and asked him what the hell made the HOA think that they could just sell my property. The guy got really defensive and claimed that because my lot had appeared abandoned and was so-called negatively impacting community aesthetics and property values, they had exercised some kind of clause that allowed them to assume control of unmaintained properties in proximity to HOA boundaries for community benefit. And by the way, guys, that is an amazing clause to steal properties around you. Props to the HOA. I told him that was complete nonsense and that my property was not abandoned, was not part of the HOA, and that they had absolutely no legal authority to assume control of anything that I own. He kept insisting that they had followed proper HOA procedure, held a vote, and everything was legitimate. I asked if I was notified of any of this, and he said notices were posted and that was sufficient. I obviously was never notified of this meeting, never given a chance to contest it, and again, I'm not a member of the HOA, so they have no authority over me or my property whatsoever. Either way, I'm meeting with a real estate attorney tomorrow, but I wanted to post here to get some preliminary advice. And by the way guys, let me know in the comments if you would be in OP's shoes and came back from deployment overseas only to find an HOA literally stole your property, what would you do? What would be your first/best course of action? Let me know in the comments, and while you're at it, please don't forget to like the video. And now let's continue with the story because we have a lot of updates to read. This is a long one. Either way, OP first said, or rather asked, can an HOA really claim authority over property that is not part of their HOA just because it is adjacent to their neighborhood? Number 2, the neighbor has a document that looks official with their HOA seal and signatures. Does that give him any legitimate claim even though their HOA had no right to sell my property? Number 3, the cars are still on my property right now. Can I have them towed immediately, or do I need to go through some kind of notice process first? Number 4, what kind of lawsuit am I looking at here? Is this something like a quiet title action? Who do I sue? The HOA, the neighbor, or both? I was deployed when all of this happened. Does that give me any additional legal protection or rights? The fact that this guy claims he paid $15,000 for it should have been a massive red flag that something wasn't legitimate. I'm honestly stunned that something like this could even happen. How is it possible for an HOA to just sell property they don't own? Is this fraud? Criminal? I'm so angry I can barely think straight, but I need to handle this the right way. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Edit/update. Thank you for the responses. A few people asked for clarification on some things. Yes, I paid my property taxes on time every year. They are set up on autopay, so there's no way the property could be considered abandoned due to unpaid taxes. The property management company I hired was supposed to drive by once a month and document the condition with photos. Looking back through my emails, they did send me photos for the first 4 months I was deployed and everything looked fine. Then the reports just stopped. I was dealing with a lot during deployment and honestly didn't notice that they had stopped sending updates. That's on me, but it also doesn't excuse what the HOA did. My grandfather bought this lot decades ago, long before the neighborhood was even built. There's absolutely no question that my lot predates the HOA and was never included in it. My lot was part of a larger parcel that my grandfather owned, and he subdivided it before the neighborhood was even built. Several people asked if the HOA's documents mention anything about adverse possession or claiming abandoned property. I have not seen the full documentation yet, but from what the president said, they are claiming some kind of authority based on the property being unmaintained and affecting their property values. That is obviously BS, but I'll know more when my attorney gets all the documentation. I'm going to file a police report like several of you already suggested, specifically documenting the damage to my fence and property. I'm also gonna send certified letters to both the HOA and the neighbor demanding they cease use of my property immediately. I'm documenting everything with photos and video. The damage is significant, probably a couple $1,000 at least to repair the fence, reseed the grass, and fix the ruts. I will update once I meet with the attorney tomorrow. Now we got some comments to the story that I forgot to read. They go like this. This is insane. The HOA has absolutely no authority over property that is not part of the HOA. That is not how any of this works. You need to get a real estate attorney immediately, which you're already doing, which is good. File a police report for vandalism and destruction of property and send certified letters to the HOA and the neighbor telling them they are trespassing. Also post a 72-hour tow notice on all the vehicles and after 72 hours have them all towed. This is gonna be an easy win for you legally, but it's gonna take time and money. The HOA is gonna be on the hook for your legal fees when this is done. Document everything. Comment number 2, how did the neighbor not do a title search before paying $15,000 for property? That's on him for being an idiot. Comment number 3, if the HOA president told him it was all legitimate and showed him official-looking documents, the neighbor might have trusted it. Sounds like the HOA committed fraud against both OP and the neighbor. Update number 1, quick update. I met with my attorney yesterday and he's taking the case. He was pretty shocked by the whole situation and said this is one of the more egregious cases he has seen in his 20+ years of practice. So here's what we are doing. Number 1, file a quiet title action to officially clear any claim the neighbor or HOA might try to assert on my property. Number 2, sending a cease and desist letter to both the HOA and the neighbor demanding they immediately stop using my property and remove all vehicles. Number 3, filing a lawsuit against the HOA for damages including property damage, legal fees, and potentially punitive damages given how outrageous their conduct was. Furthermore, we are exploring whether there are any criminal charges that could be filed here. My attorney thinks this could potentially be fraud or even theft, but that is up to the district attorney. I went ahead and posted a 72-hour tow notice on all 6 vehicles yesterday, so I'm gonna have the cars towed once the full 72-hour notice period is up, which should be in the next few days. My attorney advised me to do this by the book so the neighbor cannot claim that I illegally towed his vehicles. I also filed a police report documenting the damage to my property. The officer who took the report was actually really helpful this time. He pulled up the county property records on his laptop right there and confirmed that I'm the legal owner and that there's no record of any legitimate transfer to the HOA or the neighbor. He said he couldn't force anyone to move their cars yet because of the conflicting paperwork, but once I go through the proper tow notice procedure, I'm within my rights to have them removed. I went back to the HOA president and told him that my attorney would be in contact with him, and he looked really uncomfortable and said he would need to talk to the HOA's lawyer. Good, he should be worried. The neighbor has been driving by my property several times a day and just glaring at me. He actually yelled at me this morning that I was gonna regret messing with him and that he had every right to use his property. I just walked away and didn't engage with him. I'm now documenting every interaction though, and my attorney said this case should be straightforward since my ownership is clearly documented and the HOA had absolutely no legal authority to sell my property. He estimates it'll take several months to fully resolve, but he's confident we'll win. I will update again once we have some significant movement. Thank you everyone for the advice and support. Update number 2, the cars have been towed. Once the 72-hour period was up, I had a towing company come out and remove all 6 vehicles. The tow truck driver said this was one of the weirder jobs he's done, but he had seen similar situations with property disputes before. The neighbor absolutely lost it when he came home and saw his cars being towed. He was screaming at me, screaming at the tow truck driver and saying he was gonna sue me, have me arrested, etc. I did not engage at all, I just stood there calmly with my phone recording everything while he had his meltdown. He called the police and when the officer arrived, a different officer than I had spoken with the day before, I showed my documentation. This officer was more helpful and actually pulled up the county property records on his laptop right there. He confirmed that according to the official records, I'm listed as the owner of the parcel. The officer explained to the neighbor that because there are conflicting claims of ownership, he needs to resolve it through the courts, but that in the meantime, the county records show me as the legal owner, which means I have the right to control who uses the property. The neighbor would need to get a court order if he wanted to continue parking there, and the neighbor was still furious, but then he left. I also got a call from the HOA president who was suddenly much more conciliatory. He said there might have been a misunderstanding about the authority the HOA had over my property and he wanted to work something out to avoid legal action. I told him to have his attorney contact my attorney and hung up. My attorney sent the formal demand letter and complaint yesterday. We are now also requesting all HOA meeting minutes, financial records related to the sale, and any documentation they have claiming authority over my property. This is probably gonna get uglier before it gets better, but I'm ready for it. I'll keep updating as things progress. Comment number 1. The fact that the HOA president suddenly wants to work something out tells you he knows they are screwed. Don't settle for anything less than full compensation for your damages plus legal fees plus punitive damages for the sheer audacity of what they did. OP's response: that's exactly what my attorney said. Their sudden change in tone means they've talked to a lawyer who told them how bad this is for them. Comment number 2, I love that you recorded the neighbor's meltdown, keep that forever, it's beautiful. Comment number 3, so what happens to the neighbor's 15k? Does he get that back from the HOA? OP's response: that's between him and the HOA. My attorney said he'll probably sue them separately to get this money back, not my problem honestly. This guy should have done a title search before handing over that kind of money. Final update to the story. I promised I'd update when this was resolved and it's finally done. This turned out to be even more insane than I originally thought and I came out way ahead. So first, the discovery process. So my attorney requested all documents related to the HOA's acquisition and sale of my property. The HOA dragged their feet for weeks, claiming documents were lost or not properly filed. My attorney had to file a motion to compel before we finally got what we needed, and what we eventually received was damning. The HOA did hold a meeting where they voted to assume control of my lot. However, this meeting was held with only 5 board members present. The HOA bylaws require a quorum of 7 for major decisions, and the vote was 4-1 in favor, with only 1 board member voting against it and raising concerns about whether they actually had legal authority to do this. That board member's objections were noted in the minutes but obviously ignored. But here's where it gets really bad. The board meeting docs showed that the HOA president had specifically targeted my property and had been talking about it for months. According to testimony from other board members who we deposed later, he had complained about it repeatedly at meetings and called it an eyesore and claiming it hurt their property values. He is a real estate agent and apparently saw an opportunity here to make money by acquiring the lot cheaply and flipping it to someone in the community. You know what's the craziest part though? The neighbor who bought the lot is actually the HOA president's brother-in-law. This was a completely fraudulent inside deal. The president convinced the board to acquire my property through this bogus abandoned property claim and then immediately sold it to his brother-in-law for $15,000. The money went into the HOA's accounts, but there's evidence that the president was planning to personally benefit somehow. We found text messages between him and his brother-in-law discussing how they had split profits when they eventually resold the lot for development. When this all came out during discovery, 3 other HOA board members immediately resigned. They claimed they'd been misled by the president about the legality of what they were doing and had not understood the full situation. I actually believed them. The president is apparently very domineering and had been running the HOA like his personal fiefdom for years. About 4 months after my original post, the district attorney filed criminal charges against the HOA president. The charges included fraud, theft by deception, and abuse of fiduciary duty. The criminal case took its own course, preliminary hearings, discovery, pretrial motions, and so on. The whole criminal process took over a year, running parallel to my civil case. On the civil side, things got more complicated once the criminal charges were filed. The HOA's insurance company initially denied coverage, claiming the president's fraud was not a covered act. However, my attorney argued that the HOA itself was liable for failing to properly oversee its president and for allowing this to happen. Rather than fight that battle and risk a large judgment, the HOA's board voted to settle using a combination of their reserves and a special assessment on all members. So yeah, we reached a settlement where the HOA paid me all of my legal fees, which had climbed to about $55,000 at that point, $25,000 for property damage and loss of use of my property, $75,000 in punitive damages. My attorney pushed hard on this given the deliberate fraud against a deployed service member, and an agreement that the HOA would publicly acknowledge they had no authority over my property and would never attempt to assert any control over it again. The total settlement was over $155,000. The quiet title action went through without any contest once the settlement was reached. My title is now completely clear with no cloud on it whatsoever. As for the criminal case, well, the HOA president initially tried to fight the charges, but the evidence was overwhelming. He eventually took a plea deal about 14 months after charges were filed. From the sentencing hearing which I attended, he was convicted of fraud, received a fine of $25,000, was ordered to pay full restitution to both me and his brother-in-law, and was sentenced to 18 months in a minimum security facility, followed by 2 years probation. The brother-in-law, aka the neighbor, tried to sue the HOA to get his $15,000 back, and from what I heard, he eventually got a settlement from them, but it was far less than what he paid since the HOA argued that he failed to do due diligence with a title search. Additionally, he also had to pay impound fees for his 6 vehicles, which I thought was hilarious. I have no sympathy for him. He was clearly in on the scam with his brother-in-law and just got caught. The whole thing apparently cost the HOA well over $350,000 when you factor in their legal fees, my settlement, other board member indemnification settlements, and increased insurance premiums. Every homeowner in that HOA got hit with a special assessment of several $1,000s each to cover it. I heard through a friend that there's now a recall effort to remove the remaining board members and completely restructure the HOA. As for my lot, I've kept it for now, but I'm considering selling it or possibly building on it eventually. I've installed a much better fence with security cameras, and I've contacted with a different, much better property management company that actually does their job. If I deploy again, I'll be much more careful about monitoring my property, let me tell you. The crazy thing is that if the HOA president had just approached me legitimately about buying the lot, I probably would have at least considered it. I inherited it and wasn't doing anything with it. He destroyed his entire life over a piece of vacant land. And the next one is a satisfying malicious compliance story that you will enjoy, guaranteed. It is titled, "You Want to Talk to My Manager? Okay." So this story happened about 13 years ago. I was a field service engineer for a national retail chain. Basically, I was the IT guy who drove around in a company vehicle servicing the computer networks in the stores. The way the company was organized, there were corporate employees and then there were retail employees. Being a corporate employee, I received corporate stock as a small part of my salary, and my starting pay was 3 times the rate of any store manager. Because I was always putting out fires, I often found myself in the awkward position of dealing with store managers who honestly thought that they were the store owners and that I was just the hired help. This was truly ironic, as I actually did own a very small piece of the corporation, whereas the average store manager did not. One day, I got orders to replace a server in a store not too far from my own house. I worked out of my house but kept parts in the truck and also the back room of another store nearby. So I show up to the store where the server needed to be replaced. It was my second stop of the 3 scheduled that day. I walk in the store wearing my very obvious corporate uniform and name tag with logo. The store owner, well, retail manager, instantly demands to know what the F I'm doing in her store. I get this all the time, nothing new. I calmly explain that my boss wants me to upgrade one of the store servers, hardware replacement, and I even show her where it is that I'll be working. I explain that it'll take about an hour and that the POS registers might go offline for about 5 minutes. She's not happy about that, but she reluctantly allows me into the room where the server is and I start working. When I'm just about done, the POS registers go down as I'm switching them to the new server, which is not fully hooked up yet. It was at this point where I realize I have forgotten to bring in a couple of cables that I need to finish hooking the new server into the store network. So I run out to the truck to get the required cables. I'm gone about 2 minutes, and when I get back, the store manager is sitting at the table in front of the server and she's got food spread out all over the table. The server is under the table and I tell the store manager that I need to finish hooking up the server, gesturing under the table, and the store manager tells me I'll have to come back in about an hour after her lunch break. I am shocked into total silence. Then a cashier bursts into the room, panicked that the registers aren't working and the checkout lines are getting backed up. I explain to the manager that I have to fix the server now or else the registers will not work. The manager tells me I should have thought of that before I started working in her lunch break area. I calmly tell the store manager that she'll have to take a break later or find somewhere else to eat her lunch. She then tells me that I'm rude and incompetent and demands to speak to my manager immediately. Okie dokie, I call up my manager using my corporate-issued iPhone and quickly explain the situation and then walk into the server room to hand the iPhone to the store manager. While she's on the phone with my manager, I head out to the front of the store to explain and apologize that the registers are going to be down for a few more minutes. I cannot hear exactly what the store manager is telling to my manager, but I can tell that it's a heated conversation and I clearly hear the word "fired" mentioned a few times. It is clear that the store owner, retail manager, wants me to be fired for daring to try to interrupt her lunch break. Unfortunately for her, my direct supervisor was about 5 to 6 levels above the retail district manager. So the store manager was complaining loudly about interrupting my work to the manager of her manager's 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 manager. A few minutes later, the store manager walks out of the room, awkwardly balancing bits and pieces of her lunch spread. I immediately go back to work getting the new server up, running and rebooting the POS registers so that they will sync on the new server and cashiers can get back to work. Now everyone is happy except for the store owner, because her lunch break was ruined. The main part of my task is done now, but it takes me about another 15 minutes to clean up my mess and reorganize my truck to get ready for my next stop, which will be about an 1-hour drive from my current location. As I'm doing this, I see the retail district manager, that I've met her before, going into the store. She walks back out of the store with the former store manager, who is now carrying a box of her personal items. And yeah guys, I would say, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And the next one is a petty revenge story, which is titled "Good Luck Gaining Followers Again for Your Music Contract." So I was part of a band for a little over a year. They reached out to me after their bassist left and asked if I could replace him. At first everything was fine, then their manager started pushing for so-called more social media presence, and they told me I was good at it and suggested I take over their accounts, and I agreed. From that point on, I basically became their entire brand. I handled the designs, merch, reels, TikTok posts, visuals and everything. I grew their following to the point where honestly, the band itself was not even that good, but venues started inviting us purely because of this online presence I built. They didn't help with any of it, not even a little, and damn, I even started writing songs for them that they keep using, by the way. Anyway, a few months ago after a gig, they kicked me out without any prior conversation, just the old bassist wanted to come back. I was angry, but mostly hurt, and I'd put so much time and effort into getting them opportunities, only to then be replaced overnight. So here's my petty part. They were actively trying to get a music contract, and one of the main requirements from the company was their number of followers. Knowing this and knowing they were stupid enough to forget that I still had all the passwords, I started deleting followers, yes, one by one. I've been doing this for almost 2 months now, and their once decent following is now down to around less than 1,000, and they cannot figure out why engagement keeps dropping. So it basically goes like this: every time they post a video or an IG post, I delete almost 50 followers just for them to think that not only the engagement is wrong, but that they are creating content so bad it is making them lose so much following. I know it's not a big deal, but I didn't want to make anything huge like deleting their accounts or something like that. So that is my petty revenge. And yeah guys, thank you so much for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.